let's say a couple decides that they do want to buy a home. Let's talk a little bit about that. So they're unmarried and they're closing 2 weeks before. What's the reality there in terms of, if the wedding's called off or how to change the names? Like, what should the couple know?
Well, there's several things. First and foremost, let's talk. I know one of the questions that you and I had gone over was the whole name changing process. And that can be complicated, but it can also be simple.
Okay.
It's as complicated as you're going to make it. Not you, but the bride.
Yeah.
Basically how it works is Tennessee is what's called a homestead rights state. And basically what that means is, let's say that Susie Q, the bride, marries Harry, the groom.
Okay.
Harry already owns a home. And they decide they're just going to live in Harry's home. When they get married, Susie, the bride, already owns, once they're married and it's official and legally official, she will have 50% stake in that.
Wow.
Because of the homestead right. And that's a good thing, because that basically, why that's important to know and to understand is because a lot of people will think, oh, we got to go buy a home and house so that we're both on the deed and we both are on the loan and blah, blah, blah. That's really not the case. Move into Harry's house if that's an option. You can be added to the deed easily. It's a $62 fee. You just go into your title company and you can be added to that deed later on. That's fine. You can also go through the process of getting added to a loan on an existing home. So Harry's home, for example, the groom, you can be added as the bride, as the new wife onto that home. But you would have to go through a refinancing process. So basically they'll look at both of your finances at that point. More than likely, because the groom has already been paying the mortgage on a single income, was financed initially on that single income, you should be fine. But keep in mind, if you ranked up a ton of charges during the wedding process and you either owe a lot of people or your credit somehow has become really bad because you just went crazy during that whole wedding process, it could mess up the financing process.
Wow.
But typically that would be an easy process. Now, if you don't want to, if you're not really just adamant about getting your name right away on the deed and doing that financing and you don't need to, then because of this homestead right, you still will have right if, God forbid, your groom would pass away. And basically what that allows you to do as the bride, if you're moving in with the groom that owns the home, is it will entitle you time instead of the government or a bill collector or somebody forcing you to foreclose and get out of that house immediately. It'll give you time to look at the overall picture. Do you want to sell? Do you want to refinance it under your name? And all the different options that are available for you. So you're protected immediately just by getting married.
And is that in just the case of death, or is that divorce as well?
No, that's going to be mostly in the case of death, or like if he becomes, and I say he just because that's the example we're talking about, but if that person who owns the home becomes in a position where they can't handle it anymore, mostly in the case of death.
So obviously there are ways to be added to the deed, added to the loan, and be protected after the fact if you choose to purchase before you're married. Let's say the wedding is called off because, that's something people don't like to talk about, but it does happen. So what happens in that type of situation? What are your recommendations?
Well, before we move on, I wanted to point out one more thing as far as the deed and the loan is concerned.
Okay.
If you got married, and just so we stay on the same topic real quick, if you get married, let's say you do like my husband Jeff and I did. We bought our home before we got married.
Okay.
So the deed and the title and everything, the loan, it was under my maiden name, and it was under his name as well. So when we got married, I didn't know. I thought I just had to do what I did for the loan, because what you do for the loan is you send in your marriage certificate, you have to fax in your driver's license to prove who you say you are, and they'll go ahead and change it just like you do with anything else.
Okay.
So when I fill out my loan payment each month, it's now in my maiden name, Amy Lecision. So I thought I had to do that same process for the deeds office. So I got in this huge fight with the Rutherford County office because where our deed is registered, because I thought, I have sent you for 3 years in a row my marriage certificate, my driver's license, and all this stuff. Why is this still, the deed still coming and the record's still showing that it's in my maiden name? And it's because you do actually have to go down to a title agency. And at that point, like I said, it's a pretty simple process. It's the same thing. You take your marriage certificate, your driver's license, all of that. And then you pay a $62 fee, and they'll go ahead and process that and change it for you. Some people will tell you you have to get a big-time lawyer, and it'll take a couple hundreds of dollars. It doesn't. It's really simple. You can do that. And oftentimes, the title company that you've purchased your home with, if you go in, some title companies, if you just walk in the door, they may not do that for liability purposes. Most will, but definitely if whoever you did the title with initially, they've already got you on record, they will go ahead and change your name into that.
Okay.
So just wanted to clarify that because that's a huge, huge thing for a lot of newlyweds.
Yes, absolutely.
But your other question regarding if you buy it and then are you talking you buy before you get married and then you end up calling it off?
Yeah.
So if you do that, you've got yourself in a pretty sticky situation because here's the deal. You cannot refinance your house for 1 year after you financed it. So you've got your initial financing. You and your fiance have gone in. You got your initial financing. You closed on the deal. You've got ownership of your house. Whether you've moved into it or you haven't yet, or you've been living there for 2-3 months, or however long it is. If it's under 1 year, you cannot refinance, which means you're stuck. Yeah. So you and your fiance will be stuck within that situation. Now, what you can do is one person can move out, and you can get a roommate, and you can still be paying the loan if that's what you agree to do. But you have to remember, for at least 1 year, that other person, that fiance of yours, is going to be still listed on the deed and on the mortgage. Then after that 1 year has lapsed, or let's say they break up after they've been in the house 1 year, you can go ahead and apply for refinancing. Oftentimes you're not going to qualify because you've done it based on 2 incomes. And now you're trying to get qualified on just your 1 income, and they don't care if you have a roommate or not.
Absolutely.
They don't care how you're going to pay for it. They can't count on that. It's being based on your financing decisions. So it can be tricky.
Yeah. So the bottom line is back to being honest, being honest about finances, being honest about where you are, so that, if you are feeling like you're going down that route, you definitely don't want to do the home route. But if you do decide to purchase, there are ways to add your name after you're married and add yourself to the loan, add yourself to the deed. So either way, you can work out that route. So
yeah, that's all stuff that can be done, and it can be easy, but you just want to remember that's got to be part of your checklist post-marriage, or post-wedding, I should say, to go down your list as far as the name change and all that's concerned.
Yeah, and is that something that you as a realtor who has a specialty in newlyweds and engaged couples, is that something that you can provide to your clients? Or do you do that in terms of that checklist of, remember, you have to change your name? Or is that something you could do for Ashley's Bride Guide brides?
Sure. And the good thing about my firm that I actually work at, which is Crye Leike, like I said, Crye Leike Realtors in Smyrna, but I can use any of the locations around Middle Tennessee. So I can meet brides anywhere. I can sell anywhere in Middle Tennessee. I'm not just, even though I'm based out of the Smyrna office here in Tennessee, I'm not limited to that. So I can sell and I can help and assist clients in any area. The good thing about the overall company, they're the biggest in the area, first of all, and they have so many resources. We have in-house title companies. We have in-house lending companies. We have Magna, and we have Realty Title. And so they can work with us, and it's a one-stop shop, so to speak. If they have, one has a house, like my husband had a house, if that's the case, we can work with them to sell that house and get that on the market and get that sold so that they can afford to then go on and buy the next house like we did. Because for a lot of people, that's a huge thing, especially if you're dealing with a couple that's not in their early 20s and have never owned a home.
Exactly.
Which more and more lately, as you know, that average is changing. A lot of people are waiting longer.
Absolutely.
So we can do all kinds of things in that capacity, and we have a ton of resources from the marketing standpoint to help with that as well.